And I'm really excited to try that one. It just came in the mail today.
You hanging out underneath the truck, little barn cat? Good morning, guys. It's a beautiful wintry wonderland here. I mean, it's absolutely like a postcard this morning. We got about 5 inches of snow last night. We'll probably get another 5 inches over the course of today. You're probably wondering why I'm all dressed up. I have to go to Montpelier for some meetings today. But before I can go to Montpelier, I do have to make a pit stop. Dun, da, 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 the local Peachum post office and town hall. Good morning. Good, how you doing?
You look awfully nice. Where are you headed?
Off to work.
Awesome. Well, here you go. And you got your mail?
I did.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You have a great day. Don't forget this.
Yeah.
Do you need a hand?
No, I'm good. Thanks. So much mail. I was looking at all the mail that I got, and of all the packages, this one is the one I'm most excited about. It was a long day, and the ride back from Montpelier was a little bit crazy because it's been snowing all day, just constant. I feel like we've had about 10 inches here at the farm. Let's see what's inside our package, eh? Oh, lordy. Look at that. I hit the mother load of seeds. And to top it all off, the 2019 whole seed catalog. Thank you, Jessica, over at Roots and Refuge Farm. I really appreciate this. This is crazy. Hey, Jess.
Corn is another thing. I tried a really neat corn while I was there that I'm going to give a shot this year. I've not grown a lot of corn, but...
Well, one of the corns that I was excited about, if you're looking at page 87, is even though they tell you how to pronounce it, I'm gonna still the Pusawega blue corn. I'm really excited about trying to grow that this year because so I have this area where I'm keeping the ducks for the winter, and I'm gonna keep them there. They went out there in October. They'll be there probably through April, and just they're kind of spreading their messes. I'm throwing all my compost out there. They're pooping everywhere. They're just working the land for me. And so in May, my plan is to till it up and plant this stuff right there. And I'm excited and just get as much as we can. We'll probably dry some of it and actually feed it to the ducks. We'll eat a lot of it ourselves. We'll probably sell some of it too. And so I'm really excited about this corn. It looks great.
That's got a really rich blue. On page 77, they have the Cully corn, which is a black. And I've not tasted it. It's supposed to be pretty sweet. But they made, while we were at Baker Creek, they have a vegan restaurant there. And they had this clove and cinnamon Cully black corn tea. And it was, they served it hot. It wasn't super sweet, just very lightly sweetened. And it was so interesting. And it was really good. The thing that Jeremiah is so picky, like when it comes to stuff like that, like he is not super adventurous in food. And so for him to drink it and like drink like more than 1 cup of it was to me like, okay, like it really was very good. It was really neat. So I'm gonna try.
And what was the flavor profile?
I mean, it was just kind of, I mean, it tasted kind of like corn. I mean, like, that's the only thing I know how to describe it. And of course, I had the clove and the cinnamon, but the sweetness was like a really corn sweetness. It wasn't like a sugar sweetness. It kind of had a hint of that when you bite into an ear of corn, but served as a hot drink. It was really interesting. They actually talk about a little bit in the catalog here, in the whole catalog. I don't know if it would say it in the free catalog, but it talks about in South America it's used to brew a highly revered drink known as chicha morado. The drink was an important ceremonial aspect. We love to make purple corn juice with cinnamon, clove, and pineapple. So it was, I wonder if that's what it was that they were serving that day. It was just really delicious.
Huh, that's pretty cool. All right, I might have to throw a pack or 2 of those in the mix too, just to keep it interesting.
Also, crazy high in anthocyanins again, because it's a superfood, because it's got that dark flavor. This is their #1 in anthocyanins. So you're gonna see that in any food, and I'm sure that the Posuega, I don't know if that's right, but the blue, and that one's probably got a lot of anthocyanins in it too, for it to be that color.
You know, have you ever done the whole move, you know, where they call it the 3 sisters, right? Where you're planting the corn with the beans and the squash and doing them all together?
I haven't, but I've thought about doing that this year when we put corn back in the back. I think it would be cool to try.
I'm like, I think I'm gonna do it. It feels like maybe like that might be overly ambitious and it could backfire, but part of me thinks it would be just so cool to do the mixes.
I think it would totally work. I was actually, you know, the only time I've actually ever seen that in person, in play, is I was visiting my cousin who lived in Brooklyn, and we were walking to a market one morning and passed a city garden, and I looked and I was like, they got 3 sisters growing, and he was like, what? And I was like, that's 3 sisters, and I'm like freaking out like a fangirl seeing this growing method in Brooklyn. But it was in a community garden, like in a corner, like basically in an empty lot where they had put up a community garden, and it was beautiful. It was really neat. So I would like to try that.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I think I'm gonna give it a shot. I've been looking, I mean, what I've read online is you need to have a very specific pattern with, you know, kind of the corn stalks and the beans, and then the timing that you have to have too is a little tricky in terms of when to put each in the ground.
The timing is the big thing, because you need the corn to be established enough by the time the beans start really growing to be able to grab hold of it. So I think it's corn first, and then you plant your beans, and then just briefly after that you plant your squash, because squash grows so fast that,
Right.
you know, I think that you really just have to get the timing right. But it should be fun. It should work really well. I think it'd be really cool to try.
Yeah, well, and I guess, I mean, and then for, you know, people who aren't familiar with the 3 sisters concept, right? So the beans are providing nitrogen and bringing that up from the ground. The corn is providing a trellis, essentially, for the beans to grow up. And then the squash is smothering out all the other potential weeds by just spreading out and growing everywhere. So sort of this kind of interrelated concept.
Yeah, and it supposedly was what Native Americans, how they grew these things. And it was something that was passed down from them. So I think it would be a really interesting method. And I mean, like I said, it was growing beautifully the one time that I've actually seen it in person.
Yeah, all right, well, let's see. Maybe we'll have to compare 3 sisters gardens this year.
Yeah.
Oh, I did want to show you one thing that I was psyched about. On the pumpkin page. And I've grown these before, and I'm doing it again, no doubt. The New England sugar pie pumpkin. And that's on page 215. Like, because, you know, just super sweet. They're relatively cold hardy compared to some other things. So we weren't even picking them until the end of September. And they last forever. Like, the other one too on this same page on 215 is the delicata, which I know you're a fan of. But it's like one of the easiest squashes to prepare. Because, you know, you don't have to peel it or anything. You just, you know, basically pull out the seeds and pop it in the oven and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's definitely one that I really enjoy. And then, I've done another sugar pie pumpkin, and that might just be what it's called, is sugar pie pumpkin. But I'm going to have to give the New England a try. That's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
Yeah. No, I mean, just even that darker orange color compared to like your traditional like pumpkin.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm hoping to get more out of my squash this year. We did have such a hard time with squash bugs this last year that it was just really difficult. I'm hoping to really get more.
So what other things were you excited about in here?
Well, of course I love tomatoes, and so it's really hard for me to say which tomatoes I'm most excited about because I just love so many of them. It's not in the Baker Creek catalog. I will veer out of here for just a second to talk about Brad Gates tomatoes. They did a cool spread on Brad. It's on like page 247 and then on, and it's about his varieties. And Brad does breeding, and he creates new varieties by crossing these heirloom plants and then crossing and then stabilizing his hybrids. And I actually just got in the mail today the seeds I ordered from Brad on a couple of new varieties that he's just released. So they're actually not at Baker Creek yet. They usually get some of his stuff. They carry several of his varieties. Like Atomic Grape was on the cover of last year's free catalog. And that one, Jer told me, was their #1 best-selling seed of all time. And it is a really cool tomato. But Brad just developed a new one. It's called Painted Lady. It's actually a variegated leaf tomato plant. So the leaves have splashes of different colors in them. And I'm really excited to try that one. And it just came in the mail today. But I love his tomatoes. Several different kinds. I really enjoy a lot of them. My tomato seed collection is pretty intense. So I'm not really looking at those so much.
Do you have like a heirloom strain that you've been carrying on yourself at this point for a number of years?
I've had a couple that kind of popped up, like happy accidents, but I didn't love any of them enough to like really work on them. I would like to really start kind of intentionally doing that, like just trying to cross some things. Like, I really like this tomato and I really like this tomato, let's put them together and see what happens. One of the ones that I really love of Brad's is called Barry's Crazy Cherry. It's on page 256, and it's a multiflora, which means that it produces these like clusters of fruit, and so there are these bunches of flowers that are like softball sized bunches, and of course they set all of these fruits, and it's wild, and it's got a really thin yellow skin, really delicious flavor. It's a great cherry tomato. And I've got another one that I didn't get it at Baker Creek, but it's called Dancing with Smurfs, and it's a black cherry. And I would like to just put them together and see what happens. So I'm going to probably start playing around with some stuff like that this year.
That's cool. It'll probably look like a kind of strand of grapes or something.
That's kind of what I've got in my mind, but I don't really know how that multiflora gene passes on. It may be too recessive to actually like carry on, but I'm just going to try and see. And just figure it out.
I'm looking forward to it.
So, there's a pepper I'm really excited about this year, which I've never grown, on page 175. It's this Reza Macedonian pepper, which the name means engraved. And as you can see, it's got a lot of like marking on it. So I think that one's going to be really neat. It's a drying pepper. And the flavor is kind of more mild in heat, but it's got like it's supposed to have a pretty strong flavor to it. So that one is definitely going in my garden this year. And there are a few that I tried last year that didn't go well, and I'm excited to do them again. I love fish pepper on page 173. As far as being really beautiful and prolific, that's a really neat one. It's got a really cool history. It's got a lot of, it's an African-American heirloom, and it's, like it states in here, it's really popular in like the Philadelphia, Baltimore region, but it's got a really cool history behind it, and it's also an incredibly beautiful plant. Do you grow cucumbers? You said you grow cucumbers up there?
Oh yeah, oh definitely grow cucumbers, yeah.
The one that surprised me the most this year and kind of earned a like always spot in my garden is the Armenian. It's technically not a cucumber, it's technically a bitter melon, but it's sold as a cucumber on page 89. The thing with Armenian is it gets like massive, like it gets 2 or 3 feet long, and it's real fluted, but the skin is so thin and it never gets bitter.
And so you just slice it up and throw it on a salad or something? Like,
even when it gets like this big, it's still, and you could grow them up a trellis, which I grow a lot of things on trellises, but they grow up so nice on a trellis because they stay straight, because they're hanging instead of coiling up on the ground. And yeah, I pickled a lot of them, and they were great, and they just never got bitter at all. And so I loved those.
How do you pickle a 14-inch or 15-inch long?
You gotta cut it up. Yeah, that was slices and spears, you know, like all cut up. Yeah. Yeah.
That shows you how much I know. I'm like, wait, how does that work?
Yeah, you definitely got to cut that one up. And so I'm trying some new cucumbers this year, but the Armenian's definitely going to have a place. I'm also trying, I don't have like an eggplant I love. I don't know, does eggplant do well there? It's probably hard to establish.
It's a tough one. Actually, you know what? Allison did have a couple of eggplants. I think we might have gotten like another 2 or 3 from them. It's again, not all that prodigious.
They're very hard to establish. They need it warm.
My favorite cucumber though is always the Chicago pickling one on 93.
Yeah.
Like those things are awesome. I think I'm actually wishing I saved more from than we did. I think we're all out of them already.
Now I have tried lots of different pickling, like Boston, National, Chicago, and I never kept up with what was what. So I don't know which ones I liked better. So I might have to give that one another try and like pay attention more.
Yeah.
But that's what I use to make like whole pickles, is those little pickling varieties.
Right.
Flowers. Do you guys put much flowers in your garden?
Back to my functional nature, no. Even though I know that there's a lot of benefits that the flowers have and a lot of good that they do, I've never gotten all that much into growing flowers.
Okay.
But what are the ones you're excited about? I want to hear, because I can tell you've got a couple.
I love putting flowers in the garden. The main thing for me is, even if you're going for a really functional garden, you're market gardening, you want to manage your space well, putting things in your garden that make positive habitats for your pollinators, I mean, it's one of the best things you can do for the overall health of your garden. Like, I love, one thing that will always be in my garden for, like, until forever is holy basil. They have it on page 271 in Baker Creek's catalog. And holy basil is a really interesting herb functionally because it has an incredible amount of health benefits. It can be just picked off the plant and steeped into a tea, and it just has a wonderful medicinal properties. It's interesting because it's actually a very big part of some religions. That's why it's called holy basil. But it's just a really interesting plant. But pollinators love holy basil. I mean, I cannot tell you that there was not a single time this summer in my garden that the holy basil was not covered in honeybees. Always just completely covered in bees. So things like this, especially if you keep bees, it's really good to have these things growing on your property. But especially if you don't keep bees and you are counting on pollinators coming into your property, because I don't keep bees. I want to, and we're planning on starting next year. But I want to make sure that the pollinators are finding a place that they want to be in my garden. On page 274, that's an edible flower. It tastes a lot like cucumbers. The only time I ever ate it was to show people that you could. It wasn't like something that I was like, this is wonderful. It's really fuzzy and weird, but
yeah, I can't picture the texture of that. Like,
yeah, it's very, it's exactly how it looks.
It's like a hairy log or something.
Yeah, like you don't really want to just snack on it. However, a lot of people will freeze it into like ice cubes and stuff, more as a garnish, like to make something pretty in a salad. It tastes just like a cucumber. And zinnias are just crazy for how prolific they are, and Baker Creek has some incredible zinnias. All different colors, all different kinds, and even if you just got one and put some plants throughout, marigolds, chamomile, calendula, all of those flowers, just spacing them throughout are going to provide a positive habitat for beneficial insects. You want wasps in your garden, you want spiders in your garden, you want all of these things in your garden because they kill the pests. And so you want to make homes for those. So I love that stuff.
All right, Jess, you guilted me into putting flowers into our garden this year. All right.
I'm gonna have everybody like plant flowers in your garden. Like, you have to. But truly, like, it really is. It's incredible benefit to an overall health. And if you plant things like zinnias, they have the benefit also of being good cutting flowers, and so you can bring them into your home. So they do have a little bit of a purpose.
There you go. All right, I'm sold. Well, this was awesome. This was so helpful. Thank you. Like, I feel like I've gotten so much good advice and wisdom from you on what to order. I feel like, you know, like every time you look at like a seed catalog, right? There's like so much promise and hope of what that next year is gonna bring. So like when you're in like the winter times and you got 2 feet of snow outside, it's always so nice to be able to flip through these catalogs and talk about them with a friend and get that experience, because it's like it gets you all excited about what's coming.
Absolutely. Like, I think too, another thing to be hopeful about looking through these catalogs, I think when you can hear somebody say, I've done this and I liked it, or I'm going to do this differently in order to maybe have more success here, it doesn't just feel like pipe dreaming. You know, I think for a lot of people, they get the catalog and they haven't had a really successful garden and they think, oh, I want to do this, this, and this, but I don't think I can. And I think, like, for me, hearing you say this did well for me, I'm sitting here circling on it and writing like your initials next to it because you've recommended it. Like, it's got a recommendation on it. It did well for somebody, and that for me is so valuable, because it's like, okay, I can have some confidence in this, that I'm not just hoping it's going to do well. It's done well for somebody.
No, that's such a good point. Like that's the benefit of actually flipping through this and not just doing it by yourself, but actually taking the time to do it with other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's awesome, and to me, it's also really interesting to hear because we're in very different regions. Like, you and I are in very different regions, so it's interesting to me to hear what works well in your shorter growing season versus what I'm doing here in my longer growing season. And you're having this great success with squash, and I'm here thinking, Lord, I hope the plant lives long enough to actually produce something. And so it's really just interesting.
No, it's so true, because yeah, you know, your whole garden strategy changes based on where you live, and you just have to accept that, because you're not gonna fight nature or the weather or insects.
Exactly. So that's really cool, and I hope this did help you kind of narrow down what you're going to do with your space.
I think so. This is going to be really helpful, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, too. I'm definitely going to do the Three Sisters thing. I feel encouraged.
Awesome. Well, I will talk to you soon, and let's keep up on the gardens together. All right, Jess?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Morgan.
All right, thanks. Bye. If you want to see more of that conversation that Jess and I had, there's another video running on the Roots and Refuge channel. Go and check it out. It was a really good conversation. Also, feel free to check out this playlist of some of Jess's greatest hits. And again, don't forget to subscribe. And I will see you guys over in this next video.